Simone has had an amazing 30 plus years in a career as a passionate corporate leader. She has led large global teams and pursued coaching to learn even more about how she could bring out the best in others. Through coach training, she created extraordinary results for her company, her teammates, and just the people in her regular everyday life. Now, Simone, speaking of regular everyday life, Simone is actually human too. And what I want you to know about that is while she was doing all of those things, her husband was diagnosed with a serious illness. So she wanted to get a bit of coaching for herself to work on some of her personal challenges as well. And also with corporate, she also started to have a little bit less appeal than it once did, that professional 9-to-5 kind of grind. So she trusted who she was. She trusted her skill set. She trusted the universe. She trusted absolutely everything. And she took the leap to just leave her corporate role to start her own coaching practice. From there, things just started to unfold, and Simone eventually became the CEO of IPEC Europe. And all of that happened in that order. Now, this global leader had real challenges, real fear navigating her way through, and she's here to share those experiences with us. So Simone is here to answer your questions about coach training, about taking that leap, about navigating transitions, and becoming the coach that you know yourself to be, even if you don't have all of those details figured out yet, okay? Because Simone didn't have all the details figured out either. And guess what? With all of her experience and expertise, she still had to work through the challenges of charging what she's worth as a coach. So this is still a work in progress, though clearly she's doing an amazing job of it, but she's here to answer all of those questions. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Simone Noordegraaf, IPEC certified professional coach, leader of IPEC Europe, and perfectly imperfect human being. And I want everybody out there to feel really comfortable in asking questions only Simone can ask, because we really only have her for a very short amount of time in the grand scheme of things. So if you have questions about, how the program works, logistical questions, things like that, those are great questions too, but I'm going to share with you at the end of this webinar how you can get those questions answered, because we really want to take advantage of Simone's time and asking her questions that only Simone can answer. So if you're joining us through Facebook Live, type in your questions into the comment section. If you're joining us through the Zoom webinar link, go ahead and type your questions into the little chat box. It might look like a little talking bubble, or it might look like a folder. You'll see me looking away from the screen a few times because I'm actually reading the questions. So if that happens, that's what I'm doing as I'm reading your questions. And also, please feel free to type in where you're joining us from, because IPEC is a global presence, and we have people from the USA, Canada, the UK, Netherlands, of course. Also, we've had people call in from Scotland and Pakistan and Dubai. So we love seeing where people are joining us from today. So without further ado, Simone, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself. And also, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, what made you decide to become a coach, and why did you choose IPEC as your training program?
Great, Heather. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I became a coach because I knew there was more. And that's the short version. But if I really talk about what made me choose to train in coaching, is that when you become a leader, you only grow so far, because you grow on the basis of everything you knew and were taught. But then you actually feel that there's more potential that you can get out of the people that you work with. Sometimes they say you don't actually go and fish for people, but you teach them how to fish. And I had to learn how to teach people to fish. So I learned about coaching because it made me a better leader, and it made me drive better results. But it also made me care for people more as well. So the combination of the two has really been very valuable. You alluded to it as well, though, that at the time that I chose coaching, I was also going through a pretty difficult time in my life. My husband was very, very sick. He had early onset Alzheimer's, which is something that, of course, none of us ever wish to get. And that is difficult on the person himself, but it's also very difficult on the person that they live with, they share their life with. And just to also navigate the stress and the loss and the sadness of that, I needed some help too. And the coach program actually helped me to become a better coach. But in the program, you're also coached. So you actually get the best of both worlds. I chose IPEC because IPEC spoke to the part of me that was looking for something more out of life. IPEC is a transformational coach program, and I can actually attest to that fact because I was actually limiting myself in my life, not being fully aware of what's possible. And IPEC actually taught me how much more is possible if you let go of some of the old beliefs, if you let go of some of your old filters. And that has been tremendously helpful for me. I am very glad I did it. And I think it's a very, very large contributor to the life changes I've actually been able to make after that.
I'm really happy that you brought that up because I've got a question here that speaks right to you talking about letting go of those beliefs and that personal transformation. And just to give a quick shout out, we've got people calling in. Julie's calling in from Chicago, Illinois, Morgan, Detroit, Michigan. Looks like Mary's in California. So welcome everybody. But we do have a question from Laura that speaks to exactly what you were just talking about, Simone. Laura would like to know, can you go into some detail about the philosophy behind IPEC's coaching system? There's a secondary question to that, but I'll follow up with that because I think this speaks to when she's asking about the philosophy. I just think it ties really nicely to the experience that you go through of letting go of those old beliefs and that support and all of those things that you were just talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, IPEC, I always talk to people about the 3 elements of the training. So you get some of the traditional coach techniques. You have to learn those because they're really, really important. And in addition to that, IPEC talks about energy leadership, but it also really teaches you about self-awareness, and all of those 3 fit so nicely together, right? And energy leadership really helped me to kind of get a perspective of who I was. So it's an assessment, and it is tools, and it's teaching you about what is holding you back, what are the interpretations and the assumptions that come from your past that actually hold you back in living your full potential. So you learn about it yourself, you learn how to coach others through that, but it also really starts to open you up. The key concept for me that I took away, and there are so many that I can't actually call one out, is about oneness and separation. So when I'm afraid and when I'm limiting myself, I build a wall. And the wall is intended to keep me safe, but it's actually the same wall that keeps me hostage. So for me, understanding that and starting to see where that came from and how I could free myself from my own self-built wall really helped me tremendously. So I'll give you an example. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you.
So when I wanted to leave my corporate job, we don't talk about these things, right? Because we're all successful and we are not actually going to throw that out to everybody. But I had a big question for myself. Who am I if I don't have all those big corporate names behind me? People wanted to talk to me, right? I was working in a senior executive job in this company and that company, in Philips and in Shell. And people wanted to talk to me, but I always felt they wanted to talk to me because I was part of Philips or Shell and not because I'm Simone. And understanding, I'd almost say my right to exist was incredibly important for me to actually be able to let go. I am contributing to this world, and I am an important and valuable person, like every person, because I'm here and because I have something to offer to people, and not just because my identity is tied to a company. My identity is my identity.
Interesting. So this actually, in my opinion, makes the follow-up question even more pertinent to this. Laura's second question tacked onto this question is, so you're talking about this philosophy and the learning and all of these things. What kind of feedback do you typically get from clients when you use this system? So right there, you were talking about discovering your own identity. And I'm going to tack a little something on there, because one of the things I'm most excited about having you on for this particular graduate success interview is you do have a global perspective. You live in the Netherlands, where we have our newest location. You're also in charge of the UK location, but you also often come over here to the US, and you lived in Texas for a while. So when we talk about the feedback from clients and the different things that people discover through this philosophy, in addition to just talking about that in general, what do you notice, or is there any difference between what the European culture experiences versus the US culture?
Yeah, I love that. So my experience, because I went through the program in New England, so I actually went through the program in the US, and I've now experienced the program as well in London. So I've seen it on both sides of the pond. I think the difference is really, for me, not very visible. I've actually coached people in India and in Singapore and in China. It doesn't matter.
Wow.
What you learn to coach it for or coach at is at a human level, right? And we all actually are made up of the same history, I'd say. So if you talk about some of the basic levels of energy leadership, really translates to fight or flight. And then when you start to develop further consciousness above that, you actually start to live more of your humanity, not more of your being an American, or more of you being an English person or a Scottish person or a German or a Dutch person. You become much more human. So you learn more about doing you. Right? And whether that's doing you in China or doing you in India or in Amsterdam, it doesn't matter so much. So the feedback that I get, you know what the most important feedback that I get is when I see that what I'm actually talking about and what I'm actually asking questions about is clicking with my client. When I see the person kind of, I see the eyes start to twinkle. I see a small smile kind of pass in the face. I see a harshness turning into a softness. That is the best feedback that I can ever get. And that is not language, right? It's nonverbal language. And that is actually where the magic happens.
I totally agree. I always, I listen for the big sigh. It's interesting that you talk about being more you, doing more you, because Betsy in Denver, hi Betsy, Betsy is curious. She says, I'm curious if you feel like corporate clients expect coaches to have reached a certain level of seniority in their careers before coaching others. So I just think it ties nicely to the whole being you, and you have a corporate background and a variety of clients. Like, how would you answer that?
Okay, I love that question. And I think the answer is yes and no at the same time. I guess that sometimes it makes it a bit easier for me to coach corporate clients because of my background, and sometimes it makes it harder because I am conditioned in that world. Mm-hmm. And because of that, sometimes it's so much more difficult to actually make the shift, because there's a big expectation within the corporate world to behave in a certain way. Right? Sometimes I get in the way with my clients.
Yeah.
If you don't have that conditioning, you are very much more aware of the world that you're stepping into. So it is really, really important to be very self-aware when you go into that world, and to understand what you're coaching for. If somebody comes in and asks me to coach on a very specific corporate topic in their industry at their level, there may be questions that they wrestle with that I'm a better coach for because of the experience that I have. But most people just struggle with leadership. So they struggle with whatever I'm good at got me here, but I don't know how to move forward from this. And very often that has to do with emotional questions, with actually bringing in both the caring and the daring. So it has to become, it deals with becoming more human in these very senior roles with our mental model of how we're supposed to be. So I would say that it's sometimes a help and sometimes it's a hurt.
Interesting. Okay. So I guess what I'm hearing you say then is no matter where your experience level is at, you have something to offer to any client as a certified, as an actual trained professional coach.
Yeah. And I think it's also about starting to trust yourself and your process and your expertise. Because you know what? I still have my moments where I fumble, right? Because
Don't we all?
We are all very human, but I just want to be open about that, right? Because we all pretend like we're perfect. And I have done a pretty good job for a long time in my career to pretend that all of that. But there is a moment in your life when you actually have to kind of start to become really human and learn about vulnerability and actually facing your demons and your fears. Mm-hmm. And actually fumbling and learning from that has also really helped me to get better.
You know, one of the questions being asked here, Cindy would like to know, she says, she's asking, does Simone have a coach? So do you have a coach?
I absolutely do. I actually have two right now. And so one of them is really helping me to develop myself further on the topic of vulnerability. So vulnerability, I think, is something that, you know, it's a lifelong learning process. And I find it very difficult because it's much easier to pull up the wall than to let it down. And I also have a partner now, and the announcement went out today. So I'm very proud that I'm actually working with Jamie. She's the lead trainer in London right now and will be in Amsterdam. Very excited that she's joining me. And with her, partnering with her, actually makes me live with a coach every day. So she holds up the mirror and asks me tough questions nearly every day. So, and I'm excited about that because that is actually what's going to make me grow.
Awesome. Now, oh gosh, I might be mispronouncing this name. I want to say Prem, calling from India. So Prem, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but hello from India. That is amazing. Prem would like to know, sorry, I'm just reading it and make sure I understand. Okay, I'm just going to read it as is, and I might, because I don't want to misinterpret it. Prem is wanting to know, is the offering to clients across the world a set of thoughts? And then there's a / how does the offering make the client more self-aware and break the pattern? I think by offering, it's coaching. How does coaching make the client more self-aware and break their patterns is how I'm going to interpret that. So Prem, if I didn't understand the question, please type a clarifying question.
I think it actually speaks to a lot of what we learn at IPEC, right? At IPEC, we say a thought drives a feeling, drives an action. And a lot of coaches coach at the level of actions. So we actually say, well, you know what, if you want to become a better leader or you want to make a promotion, then here's what we want you to do, right? But we don't always coach. And at IPEC, we are taught to do this, but coaches don't always coach at the level of the thought and the belief. So if you actually go down to the thought level, if there's a thought behind that, I'll give you a great example. You know what? My father always taught me to be a good girl and work really, really hard, right? If that thought drives everything I do, then whenever I get challenged, I don't always know this, I don't have it aware, but my father is standing right behind me. So I can change my behavior by force, but the better side of it is to start becoming aware of my father standing behind me and changing the thought, changing the fact that I am allowed, and I'm actually even better for it when I work hard, but I play as well and I rest. So changing the thought actually makes me a better leader because it doesn't only make me drive, it also makes me more empathic. It makes me understand where people come from and change perspectives. Because I think that's the energy leadership. It's my register, right? It's what I have available to me to be a leader. And if I work too hard, I get to the bottom of the register and I don't use the full music that I can make. I hope that explains Prem's question.
I think so. But again, Prem, if we didn't fully answer your question, or if that wasn't what you were asking, please type in a clarifying question. We'll try again. But what I heard you saying, whether it did answer that particular question, what I'm hoping like people took away from that is what Simone's saying is it's really about your whole person, your whole being, and recognizing where your limiting beliefs are and what choices you're making. Now, Sherry, looks like Sherry's in Philadelphia. Hey, Sherry. Sherry's got a great question that I know is right up your alley. She is wanting to know, she says, do you find that corporate clients are comfortable with IPEC's proprietary assessment tool? And maybe you could explain a little bit about the ELI assessment, just in case people out here don't know exactly what that is, versus widely known tools like DISC, Myers-Briggs, those types of other assessments.
So there are pros and cons to every assessment, right? And so a lot of assessments that I took when I was in corporate, they put you in a box. And actually, you can't get out of that box anymore, right? That makes it hard because, when you use insights, you are a color, right? And people actually start to address you by your color. So it almost becomes a stigma.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I can tell you, I've lived it. So Myers-Briggs, right? I mean, you're an introvert or an extrovert and all the other elements of Myers-Briggs. It's a fantastic tool to start to understand where you come from. Oh, there's somebody actually saying, Sherry, she's saying that's true. So Myers-Briggs, fantastic tool to get to know you, right? So you start to actually experience who you are, and sometimes you find that you actually struggle to communicate with somebody, and it's a fairly black and white assessment, right? So when you are actually more intuitive and you have to speak with somebody who understands facts better, so you try to tweak your style. The energy leadership is an attitudinal assessment. So it's a bit different in the sense that we actually assess where you are now today. And we then assess where you have opportunities for growth. And what I love about the ELI is that you go into a coaching assignment and you ask somebody to fill it in and you coach for, in my case, I do 6 months. And then you do the ELI again at the end. And you start to see people shift. So, corporate clients love to see factual results, right? They want to understand the return on investment. And the ELI actually is a fantastic tool in that sense because it gives you the information to coach somebody to a new place. They have a lot of recognition. And it actually allows you to show somebody the results of what they're doing. And IPEC's done great research on actually demonstrating that it is a valid, scientifically significant shift that you're creating when you coach from one assessment to the next. So yeah, I think it's a very powerful tool. I will add that because it goes, we talk about the 7 levels of energy. People sometimes are a bit uncomfortable with that because they don't actually understand it right off the bat. But that's the opportunity of your coaching trajectory to actually help them to get to know those levels and actually help them to see what more is possible for them.
Awesome.
I did one today, and I think it was very well received.
Oh, great. Perfect. And I know that we were talking about the ELI, but just so for everybody out there, not only do we have the ELI, the assessment that Simone was talking about, IPEC also has a mobile app called Scope, which is like mini ELIs in the moment. So just another thing, if you are going to be talking to an admissions coach and you want to know more about that, please feel free to, ask questions about that. Because I don't know of any other coach training program that has assessments and mobile apps and all that cool stuff. But Meg from Brooklyn, New York. Hey, Meg. I always like to give like a little shout out to people. Meg has got some great questions, and I'm just going to go ahead and read all 3 of them because they all go together. Okay. And Simone, thank you so much for just really bringing your insights and your honesty and your transparency to all of these questions. Like the answers that you're giving, I'm just like, wow, they're blowing me away. So I hope everybody out there is also, gaining great knowledge from this. But Meg from Brooklyn is wanting to know, she says, I have a question about choosing your niche market or your niche market. First, how did you choose who you serve? Next, was it fully based on your experience or who you had access to? Or do you feel like looking outside your career is best as to not pigeonhole yourself into a narrow niche?
Okay. I love that question.
Yeah.
The only thing I can do here is to give you a very personal answer, right? Because during the program, you get a lot of support in choosing your niche. I see people initially, and I chose myself initially, my own niche based on what I know, right? So you experience things in life and you can also very much relate to people. And sometimes you also feel that you have so much to offer, but you also want to help people in that space. So my opportunities could have been just as well going to corporate and executive clients, but also to caregivers. Because you know what? That is a very, very tough job. And I think those people, they deserve a shout out and they also deserve a lot of support. So for me, it was choosing what I'm familiar with, but also, and I think that's even more important than the familiarity, is where do you actually feel that you've got the most to offer, right? I see corporate people, and this is not about being judgmental. It's just about sometimes seeing people just being not fully alive when you are in a corporate job. And it is so exciting to start seeing people come to life and to see the wealth spread, right? And I mean the spiritual wealth almost and the emotional wealth, because it actually really has helped me to coach my team members, so my direct reports, and see them then to start transferring it to the next level and the next level. For me, that was extremely exciting because you could see like the ink stain move. So I think it is really about, where does your energy go? Where do you feel you can have the most impact? Because we are put in this world for a reason. And I think that our reason is to have impact on yourself, the people around you, and actually help to make a difference.
Now, Morgan is wanting to know, and I'm going to ask Morgan's question, but then I'm actually going to also flip it around. Okay. Okay. Morgan is wanting to know, do you think enrolling in IPEC directly after completing undergraduate school is too soon? Now, how I'm going to flip that around is nobody's asked this question yet, but I know because we've had it before. We have people ask that question of, am I too young? Is it too soon? We also have people ask, am I too old? Or, because I'm going to be retiring. So we get both ends of the spectrum. So what are your thoughts on the whole too soon, too old, too early, too late, and everything in between?
Okay. Well, so I love the fact that when you are ready for it, when you're interested, when you start to see the programs and it starts to speak to you, then you're probably in the right time, right? And if I really reflect on the too young, too old thing, you know what? Yesterday I was talking to two students, not just graduates. They were still in the program, and they are in their late 20s. And I actually envy them. I envy them because I'm thinking, if I would have done this program when I was 25,
I feel the same way.
how would that have influenced my life, right? So I'm now going to be really, really honest. I would have probably been a better caregiver through my husband's illness process. I look back at that and think, wow, sometimes I was so impatient, and I would not have been so impatient if I would have done this program much sooner. Because it is not only about coaching others, but it is also learning skill sets for yourself. So you would become a new first manager. You will do that with a new intention, with a different attitude. You will actually become a father, right? How can these skills help you to be a father? Okay, I can go on and on and on. So too old. I love the experience that people bring when they're further in life, right? the pain that I have suffered with my husband is making me also a better coach, because it gives me depth and it gives me different perspectives of what people are going through. So I think the answer is pretty clear. I think that this contributes to your life and the life of the people around you. And I don't actually believe that there is a too early or too late moment.
Fabulous. I concur. I think the oldest student that we've had, I think, was 81.
Oh, I love that.
Right? Brilliant.
I love that. Think about if that would be your grandmother, what she would have to offer you. Man.
Right? Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, it looks like Cheryl is asking, okay, I'm going to ask Cheryl's question, but I'm going to expand on that one too, because I love the question. I think we can go a little deeper with it or wider with it. Cheryl is saying that I believe she's saying she's enrolled and she's thinking of doing module 3 in London versus the US, because she has to reschedule anyway because of a conflict with the dates, which, by the way, everybody out there, you can do a module in any location that you want. You don't have to pick one and stay there. You can bounce around if you want to. We have lots of people that do that, especially for work. So that's what Cheryl's talking about, is she's thinking of doing module 3 in London versus the US, as she has a scheduling conflict. So she wanted to know if you recommend this because of the ability then to network internationally. And so I was looking at that question. I thought, wow, that's a great question, because to your point earlier in the conversation, you said you've had clients like all over the world. So would you recommend that, like, even if somebody's here in the US, would you recommend that they maybe take all 3 modules in the Netherlands or the UK or wherever, if they're planning on having global clients?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing for it and against it, right? I think that there are real great, reasons to stay in one location, and there are great reasons to move to other locations, right? So building your network is a fantastic experience and reason to switch locations, and getting that cultural awareness. Well, you and I talk about that all the time, Heather.
We do.
I mean, understanding how people think and whether people think differently at a different continent, and how does that work with that coaching on a level of humanity. It's interesting and it's energizing as well. I have always loved dealing and working with other cultures. I've spent quite some time in India, China, and Brazil. It's fantastic. So I recommend it. And you know what? Some people see life a little differently, right? They prefer to have those close ties and the deep ties with a specific group of people. So I don't think there's really a wrong or right answer. But given the person that I am and the life that I've led, I mean, it's incredibly energizing to go to new places and meet new people and build a deeper tie than you would normally make if you would go somewhere very briefly.
Awesome. So what I'm hearing you say is no right answer, no wrong answer. What I'm hearing you say is really it depends on who you are and what your vision looks like for who you want to show up as a coach.
Yeah. And as a person.
Awesome. Sarah in Portland, Oregon is wanting to know, and I'm going to tie this to a comment that I think it was Michael made earlier in the chat, and a comment that I think we talked about a little bit in introducing you, about overcoming that fear of going out there and actually charging what you're worth and getting that first client. So Michael had mentioned in a comment earlier I saw about facing that like imposter syndrome, and it ties really nicely with what Sarah's asking. And Sarah's saying, when you started your coaching career, what methods did you find most successful with regarding to finding clients? So maybe we could tie all of those things into Sarah's question and kind of, talk about, not only is it about finding clients, but facing those fears, charging what you're worth, the imposter syndrome, all those, that big bag. Yes,
that's great. So imposter syndrome, I suffered from that. I can have this great career, do all these things, and you still have your moments where you are thinking, oh my goodness, somebody's going to find out that I'm just a fraud, right? And there are great coaches, and in the training, you can have somebody coach you around that topic. So please just make sure that you're open about that. So what I do is I get my name out there, right? I am associated with groups of coaches. I am associated with people who have their corporate careers. I am very active on LinkedIn. I'm very visible there, and I hope, of course, to see you guys all out there, because being visible and actually showing what is important to you, that is what attracts people, right? So being out there, not being too afraid of showing who you are and how you actually approach your work life and your coaching practice, I think is really, really important. So then, of course, you get to the question of, okay, what am I going to charge, right? And I think that you can actually start to experiment with that a bit. So I wasn't charging. I was in this corporate world and it was nice and safe. I did not need to charge, right? So I was coaching my heart out. Actually, I was coaching my heart out left, right, and center, right? And I was giving away a lot of my time, attention, a lot of me. And in my case, my boyfriend was a real big supporter of getting my worth. So who is your secure base that helps you to kind of figure out what you're worth? So there are lots of resources on this. So you go and Google, you speak to other coaches. There's a fantastic, very active community online for IPEC. So IPEC coaches band together and they help each other to figure this out. And for me, it was really about experimenting. And I'll tell you a little trick. So I was struggling with this. And the advice that I got was, go out there and ask for what you think you're worth and then see the response. You can always offer them a discount afterwards.
Yes.
And actually, that is a pretty great system. So don't tell anyone I said that, right? Because they're all going to look shocked. No, but I am very serious, because the risk of us charging less than what we're worth is actually really, really high. And you are offering people not only productivity at work and results, and actually a much better career or a much better life, but you're also offering them growth and happiness. And I mean, that is invaluable. And I think it's really about practicing and starting to believe in who you are as a coach.
I'm really glad that you brought up the incredible support and how active our community is and how supportive they are of each other, because I think a lot of people don't realize how invaluable that is, especially when you're first starting out and you're scared and you're like, oh, I just got my first client and I've forgotten everything that I was taught.
Yeah. And it's actually a very nice reference framework as well. I constantly see people saying, oh, you know what? I need a coach in this space. It's not my area of expertise. Is there somebody who can help out? And I love that about IPEC coaches, because they are so generous.
Thank you. They really, really are. We really have an abundance mindset and putting the other person first mindset. I'm not the best coach for you, but let me help you find the one that is. Yeah. Now, Cindy is wanting to know, and I love the authenticity of this question. Cindy, you are so brave to put it out there. So I really want to acknowledge you for this. Cindy is asking, how does a person get over the fear of investing the money into the program? And it's a beautiful question.
Yep. It's a beautiful question. So I'm going to give you a very personal answer. Now, I can tell you as well that IPEC admissions coaches have a lot of experience with this, right? And when I started to talk, I've always had a bit of a thing around money, and I earned a lot of money, and then I left my job and I went into coaching and I set up IPEC and I started to invest a lot. A big element of that is to start to experience and maybe even practice a little bit with your attachments to money, and to kind of start to experience that. And actually, you could get coached through that as well. To start to experience that if you actually let go of your attachment of that particular outcome, great things are actually coming to you. And that is, sometimes that may sound like a bit of a fluffy statement, but it is about that deep belief and that sense of there is a lot out there that if I'm going to contribute and I am going to offer myself wholeheartedly, because that is a condition, that things are actually going to come my way. And I see that with coaches that are now letting go of some of their attachments. And in this case, I'm talking about money, but it could also be a job, but it also could be an identity, right? I mean, who am I if I don't have this particular career? Mm-hmm. So it's very much about experimenting with who am I if I am not. And for me, that was really, really important. So starting to let go of that. What I don't recommend is that you do what I did for a very long time, that you turn so unhappy that you have to leave, right? Make the choice before you actually go there. We all know the stories. People become very unhappy and burn out. And that is a function of staying in a place where you actually don't belong and where you are not living your best life and you're not offering your best self to the people around you.
That is, you just gave me chills. That's such a real and honest and just true and transparent answer. Thank you for being so brave about that. And Cindy, I would encourage you to speak with an admissions coach. What Simone's talking about, for anybody who comes through IPEC's program, you speak with an admissions coach. We're a real school. We have a real admissions process, and part of that process is speaking with an admissions coach. They're not salespeople. So what Simone's talking about is you can actually get coaching around that. And maybe it's for you, it's not an attachment to money. Maybe there's something else going on. So I'm going to invite you to speak with an admissions coach and actually ask for coaching around, ask that question. How do I get past this? Because one of the things we learn in coaching is these types of things show up in lots of different areas of our life. So whether you choose IPEC or not, you can get some coaching on that. Carrie from Duluth. Hello, Carrie from Duluth. Oh, she's thanking you.
Thank you, Carrie.
She wanted to give you a thank you, a shout out. Oh, that's so nice. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. I'm glad you're ready to embrace the process and the journey. Yay. Okay, we've got a question here from Dylan. Dylan is wanting to know, oh, great question. Simone, if you could travel back in time as you were registering for IPEC and you could only ask your IPEC enrollment coach or admissions coach only one question, what would that question be?
Wow.
I know, right?
Okay, I have to think about this for a second. Only one question. I think I would ask, wow, this is a hard one. I think I would ask about how to actually be able to trust the consciousness and the energy leadership to help me live my fullest potential. So how does that work? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? How I'm going to experience energy leadership, not just for my clients, but for me personally. And if you got those guys for a little while, I like that question. So, you know what? I think that when I went into that, I just asked the practical questions because I didn't actually know so well how life-changing the program is and was. But with what I know now, I would have asked more questions about that because it would have made me more courageous.
Awesome. And that actually really plays nicely into the question that Sherry is asking. She's asking, is there anything unique about IPEC's program or methodology that sets it apart from its competitors? So maybe you could speak a little bit to answering or how you would answer, that one question that you would ask of an admissions coach? Because I think it pairs nicely with what Sherry's wanting to know as well.
Okay. So can you rephrase the question once more?
Yeah. So Sherry is saying, is there anything unique about IPEC's program or methodology that sets it apart from its competitors? And the one question that you would ask was about IPEC, the energy leadership aspect of it. So I was like, ooh, that's a really nice little marriage of these two questions.
Yeah. I got a little distracted before I go into the answer because I was thinking of another question that I could ask. So if I can add one more.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think admissions coaches also can help you. Yes, one more, he says. Admissions coaches also can help you to ask your boss to support you through the program, right? I mean, they may not contribute to the whole of the admissions price, but if you are courageous enough to ask and you feel comfortable with just engaging with your boss around it, they can also help you with that. So just a very practical one that I think some people find scary as well.
Yeah.
So what I think is unique about IPEC is energy leadership. I read the book before I did the program and was intrigued by it, but learning about energy leadership and how to coach people to open up the full possibility of the energy leadership levels and then having the assessment with it. So for me, that makes IPEC very unique. And that is actually, if I'm really clear about it, that's it's the result of us coaching people to fuller awareness and consciousness, right? So energy leadership and ELI are the tools that we can use to do that. But I think that most coach programs teach you to coach and use coach skills, and they probably do that exceptionally well. But what we add to it is awareness, consciousness, and a whole program around it, including assessments. I think that's what makes us unique.
Love it. Luis is asking, yes, I agree with you. That's one of the things that makes us unique. And I want to ask Luis's question right after that, because his question is in your experience, how accepting are the Europeans of coaching? So with that being the unique thing and different cultures, how accepting is the European culture of exactly what you just spoke to?
Yeah. Well, what I always find funny about Europe, so having lived in the States for 10 years and then also having lived, the rest of my life actually in Europe, Europe is not one Europe, right? So if I would have to give an answer, I would probably have to divide it in all the individual countries that all have different levels of awareness and comfort around it. The Netherlands, for instance, is a pretty mature coaching market, but you can actually see, and this is what I find really interesting, is that there are very different levels of coaches. So I forgot to mention that, and I think it's important to mention that I got my ICF qualification, right? I am in the process right now, because I didn't need it before, to actually get my PCC, so the qualification of the ICF coaches. So the second level actually already. And then we are actually also now getting the accreditation for the EMCC, which then translates into a lot of local qualifications and accreditations. And why is that important? Because a lot of markets in Europe are mature, so you differentiate yourself and the quality of what you have to offer by having that accreditation. I would say that Europe has a bit of a spectrum on where coaching is already fully embraced and people know it and they understand it. And in addition, you see countries where it's emerging. So if you go more to the east of Europe, that's where you start to see that there's still work to be done to make the whole process much more familiar. What I love about consciousness is that people really are starting to open up to that. Right? They're reading more about it. They understand more about it. They understand much more of how consciousness actually is a key element to living your full life. Even within corporates. I think within corporates, we don't call it maybe consciousness, but we start to talk more about purpose, right? We start talk maybe about one team and one company, but essentially underneath all of that, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it totally is. Now, with it all being the same thing and all this great learning that you got from IPEC and all of this, Laura's got a really interesting question. And she wanted to know what limitations, and I'm going to throw this in there, if any, but what limitations, if any, have you noticed or experienced from IPEC's coaching systems and practices?
Wow. You know what I feel when I'm going to have to say that I actually don't know. And I feel that people might not think I'm trustworthy, right? Because I'm now the CEO of IPEC Europe. But what I would ask is, go to the Facebook page, go and look at what people actually say there. Because it's a program that has everything in it. So you get the modules, you get the mentor coaches in between. There's a success coach. So people actually coach you to put this into the world, not just learn it into the classroom and with your fellow students. There is a business development program. And, there's this whole pretty awesome community. So, I'll tell you one limitation. We're not big in Europe yet, right? But we're going to change that. So I think that's a big thing that I'm very excited about, because we weren't such a big brand in Europe as we were in the US. Well, you know what? Jamie and I, and whoever's going to be working with us in the future, we are very determined to actually change that. And what I notice is that the students are all on board and the graduates are too. Mm-hmm. So we've got a small army of people that are really ready to change that.
I love that you listed off everything that we have. And what came to mind for me was in module 3, the big manual that you get. And each of those chapters is a full workshop, like all unto itself. So they even give you that. Because when I read that question, I was like, how would I answer that? There's no limitations. For me personally, the only limitation would be myself. What's stopping me? Because IPEC has given me absolutely everything and more. And I was with you. I was like, nobody's going to believe me if I say that, but it's the truth. So
yeah, I think so too. And I think it is something that, I am incredibly happy with the step that I made. And it's been 5 years ago, right? And I knew, that's so interesting. I knew 5 years ago that I wanted this in Europe because we have something to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we just have time for one last question. And this has popped up a few different times, so I'm going to go ahead and ask it. A few people are asking, how can they work directly with you? And they're wondering what your website is. And also there's been some comments, is your website available in English? Because they're saying it's only there. The people who have found it are saying that it's only available in Dutch. So do you have a website link, and is it available in English? And are you accepting new clients? Because, you might not be. I got to be honest with everybody out there. Like a lot of times I'm not accepting new clients. There just aren't enough hours in the day. So, if you did want to work directly with Simone, you might not be able to just yet. So Simone, do you have the website? Is it in English, and are you accepting new clients?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for the compliment and actually the belief in me. I am actually revamping my website at the moment. I am actually creating an English website because I've done everything in my life in English. So it's going to be English. So don't worry about that. But it is under construction. So it's not out there to be found. But what I would recommend that you do is just reach out, connect to me via LinkedIn. I would accept a few very limited number of clients because, my mission right now is to build IPEC in Europe. So let's just connect and see from there.
LinkedIn is a fabulous vehicle. I actually just reached out to the person you guys can't see is Suzanne. She's our technological guru. I actually just reached out to her and asked her to grab Simone's LinkedIn and be able to put it up there for you. So hopefully she'll have that in a second, be able to put it in there. But we are just about out of time. And so I do want to take just a moment and invite anybody out there who is thinking of, first, of becoming a coach, and second, looking for the right coach training program for you, to connect with an admissions coach. And Suzanne's going to put the link of how to schedule a session with an admissions coach. The reason why I said it in that order is, an admissions coach, the first thing we do is we try to figure out, is becoming a coach the best next step for you? Outside of IPEC, any other coach training school, whatever, is that the best next step for you? If it is, great. Then is IPEC the best fit for you? Like we said earlier, the admissions coaches, they're not salespeople. We're a school. We're going to be here. We're going to be doing our thing. Over in Europe right now, Simone is joining us from the Netherlands. They're going to be doing their thing at the IPEC Europe schools. Yes. So please don't hesitate to set up that appointment to speak with an admissions coach. Get your questions answered. Start really doing that self-discovery, that exploration. And I think Simone said something really important that I'm going to invite everybody out there to really take to heart. She said, don't wait until you're in so much pain, right? Don't wait until you're hitting that burnout. Like, take that leap before you reach that point, because you don't know what doors will open to you when you start to change your life in that way. Simone, are there any final thoughts that you would really like to invite people to reflect on and consider as they go about the rest of their week?
Well, so I didn't think of one before we started. I have shared a lot of what I wanted to share today, but I wish for everybody to not just make this decision with their head, right? You know, I always keep saying we have three brains. We have our head, we have our heart, and we have our intuition or our gut. And I would really ask everybody to use all of them, because your head will always be risk avoidant and your heart will actually see the opportunity. So if I can leave with anything, I'd leave with that. That's beautiful. I'm totally going to steal that and live by that. Feel free. That's great. Thank you. So everybody out there, thank you so very much for joining us today. We know that you did not have to take time out of your day to spend this hour with us. We're very appreciative of that. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, I wish you a life and a profession of your choosing. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Bye-bye.